All right. So we're live. Welcome this morning. We're talking about how if you're ready to buy a home on a single income, we can just forget about that now because I would not really recommend you holding out on that being a realistic possibility anymore. In Canada, it's just way too expensive to buy an average price home and be able to qualify for that home if you're not making a huge income. If you're watching me today on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you're going to be able to see my calculations here. So I'm just showing them on the screen. Let me get those up. All right. So I got those up there, and you can see that I've put in 3 examples there on just how much it's going to take to be able to buy a home in Canada and how much down payment is required and how much you can buy, because a lot of times people are working towards a goal, and whether that is a down payment goal or an income goal, the idea is we've been brought up with the idea that if we save really well and make a really good income and be able to just put all that together, we should be able to buy a average home in Canada because we're doing kind of what we need to do, and that should work. And I've seen a lot of people now come to me over the past few months where they'll have done that. They will have moved into their parents' basement, or maybe the two of them have rented a room, or it's a single person renting a room, and they're saving so hard and they're really not living life whatsoever. Like no coffees out, no going out, nothing at all, right? And they save like $25,000 to buy a home, right? And they both have full-time jobs, and they're driving, not really new cars, like pretty beat up beaters. So there's no car loans, and they're just trying to get by on the amount that they've made, which is probably together like $100,000, the two of them. And they come to me and they're like, you know what, Joe, we think we have done really well. We have saved, $25,000 by living in our parents' basement, and we skimped and saved, and we've not gotten a car loan. We driven beaters. We didn't go out at all for like 2-3 years to make this happen. We both have full-time jobs, no debt, and the bank says, sorry, you really don't qualify for very much. You really don't qualify for very much at all. You actually will qualify for not even the average price home in Canada. Not even close at all. So if you save and you do all the right things and you're making a good full-time salary and you have no debt, even if your income together with your partner is $100,000 with minimum down payment, you really can't buy the average priced home in Canada. And that's really unfortunate. So much so that you can't even reach close to that average price home, not even within $200,000 of that average price home. So if you're joining me on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, you're going to see the figures and the calculations I've put up on the screen here. If you're joining me on TikTok or Instagram, you won't see the calculations, but I'll go through them now with you all just verbally so you can get an understanding as to what I'm speaking about today. So if you're making an income of $80,000, so this is a very common situation I see, is there's a boyfriend, girlfriend, they've lived with, one of the parents for 6 months, 12 months. They've saved up 25 grand, right? And he makes $50,000 a year, or she makes $50,000 a year, and the other one makes $30,000 a year. So together they're making $80,000. And with that $80,000, you're only going to be able to afford a $300,000 home on that situation. And mind you, that's based on no debts, and no car loans, nothing like that. So you're driving a beater, you've saved up 25 grand. Together you make $80,000. You can't even buy the average price home. You can only buy a $300,000 home. And where can you get a $300,000 home today? Nowhere. You talk to any real estate agent, you give them a call right now, and if you call them and ask them, I want to buy a $300,000 home, they're going to laugh really hard. In fact, do it right now. If your friend's a real estate agent, send them a note saying, I think I can qualify for $300,000. Show me some properties, and there's going to be nothing. If you do find something, it probably won't have walls. Anyhow, if you're looking at a place, and that's what I'm saying, if you're buying a home on your own, it's dead. You can't do that anymore. It's not possible. Even if you had an $80,000 income on your own, just yourself, and you had no one else, then you can't do that. And if you have an income even higher, say forget about 80,000, forget about even 100,000. Let's look at an income of $125,000. So if we're looking at an income of $125,000, then what we're going to be looking at then is a required amount of $29,250 minimum to buy a $450,000 home. And $125,000 a year is a good income. So you're probably thinking, no problem, I make $125,000. I have no debts whatsoever. I have no car loans at all. I have the $30,000 saved up because I've been living in, a room at a rooming house and saving every month and, living life to the most extreme savings as possible. And the bank's going to say you can only qualify for $450,000. And where can you find a house right now for $450,000? It's just not possible. Not possible at all. So even if you're making that much money, which would put you in a high income earner category for Canadians, you can just forget about buying a house today. It's just not going to happen. You may be able to find a condo for that price, but if you do, the condo fees are high and you got to qualify for that. So let's take a look at what income is needed to buy a average price home in Canada. So the average price home in Canada as of last month was $668,754. And, for that kind of price, you're going to need down payment and closing costs. You're going to need just over $100,000 to be able to get into that home as a minimum amount. That's down payment and closing costs, $101,906.71. So say if you saved that amount of money and you also make $165,000 as an annual income, then on top of that, you're going to need an excellent credit score. And on top of that, you're going to need to have no debts whatsoever at all. You can't even have a car loan. And then you can only buy the average price home in Canada. You need an absolutely outstanding high income in Canada just to buy the average price home in Canada. So what can you do if you're in this situation where you're making $100,000+? You have the down payment saved up because you've been doing the savings thing, but you just can't qualify for any home in your market. So there's the obvious solution. You can move outside of your market and to a low-priced market like Winnipeg. Winnipeg has the cheapest average price sale price in Canada. So great place to buy a home if you're looking for the cheapest home. But as a single person, it's impossible to buy a home on your own anymore. It's just the interest rates have gone way too high, and you can't even qualify anymore. So you will need $165,000 annual income now to be able to buy a average price home in Canada. So what are the solutions to be able to afford more home if you're not in that income bracket? You can change cities. It's never a great solution because uh, there's things that tie you to your area, like family and friends and history and all that. So you may not want to move at all and make that an option. And plus, who wants to live in Winnipeg? But you can look at other areas too. There are some other lower priced areas, but then you need to find a job there. And who knows if you're going to make as much money there as you do right now. And then how is the lifestyle going to be different? How is the culture in that area? There's all that stuff to consider. What's another way? Well, I've been seeing a lot of people take on side hustles to be able to boost their annual income. And when they're taking side hustles, they're doing things like Uber, skip the dishes, that kind of thing. I would not recommend that as a side hustle to be able to qualify for more. I would recommend something that can show a stable part-time income as a side hustle, or even I've seen some people take on a second full-time job. Stuff like that, we can look at using that income to help boost your qualifying power when it comes to the mortgage application. But these days, you definitely need both partners working. And I hate to say it, it's almost like everyone needs a third person on the mortgage application. Because to make $165,000, each person has to be making at least $50,000 or more. And that's a really high amount to expect for all the people on the mortgage application. So what I'm seeing a lot of people do right now when they're buying a home is they're buying a home with friends. So what they'll do is they'll buy a big enough home where the two of the friends and their partners are going in together, and they're buying a big enough home that they feel is going to be comfortable for those friends to share for the next 5 to max 7-10 years, right? And then what the plan is for them is either to completely share the whole single family unit with the same kitchen and same bathrooms, or to, once into the home, make some minor renovations to be able to set up separate living areas with separate kitchen and things like that, which can be done. And you can do that to be able to separate the living areas, make it more private for yourself. And what I'm seeing is people are doing that together to be able to just get into the market and to buy a home that way. And once they're into the market and owning a home that way, then they can start building equity together. And then a few years, like 5 to 7 years later, they both sell that home and one person buys the other out. It's a way to build some equity and stop renting. And you also save on some living costs. So that's one way. Another way people have been doing it are they're getting their parents on as co-signers. And you need two parents that work these days. I just did a file for two working full-time first-time home buyers, and we had to have both working full-time parents on title as co-signers as well, just for them to get into the average home in Canada. It was quite hard to get that mortgage, and we got them a great interest rate, the great lender. Very happy with the result of that one, but it did take a lot of people on title with with those first-time home buyers to be able to qualify for that home. So, one way we're discussing to help boost your qualifying power today is to make more money through a part-time job or a second full-time job. Another way we're looking at increasing your qualifying power today is by, increasing your income on your application by adding co-signers. And we've looked at a couple different ideas like adding parents or friends getting in on this together. And then you're buying with friends, so you're sharing the same living space. And I've seen that quite often, more so with multi-generational families. The families that are coming over from overseas, folks that are immigrating to Canada right now, what they're doing is they're coming to Canada, they have assets, they have savings. So they get a job in Canada and right away they start working and they can buy a home pretty quickly in Canada because they have savings, and the 4 or 5 or 6 of these new immigrants all go on the house title together. So a lot of the times we're seeing people like the whole family, like the mom, the dad, the daughter, the son, the grandpa, the grandma, they all have a job. Maybe they're all making $30,000-$40,000 a year, but together the 6 of them can qualify for a pretty nice home. And pooling your assets together really makes a difference. So if you can, again here, pool with another party, whether it is that they're living in the house with you or they're buying the house with you, that's the only way you can buy a house these days. If you're a single person, even if you're making a good amount of money, you can just forget about it. You're going to need at least $165,000 of an annual income with no debt to be able to buy a house today. That is the average price home in Canada. And I hate to say it, but I don't see very many people come across my desk that earn that much money. No. In fact, if you're making $80,000 a year, that is usually pretty good. And for $80,000 a year right now, you can buy a $300,000 home in Canada, and that's going to get you nothing right now in Ontario. With no debt. Yes, so that's no debt. $80,000 will get you a $300,000 home. An annual income of $125,000 will get you a $450,000 home. And an annual income of $165,000 would get you a $668,000 home, which is the average price home in Canada. And that's if you have no debt. To buy a $1 million home, you're going to need an income of over $200,000. No question about it. It's just not going to happen. And you're going to need at least a $200,000 down payment to buy a $1 million home. So a big down payment requirement as well, in addition to that. Great questions. If you're just joining me now, we're talking about how it's pretty much impossible now for a single person to be able to buy a home for themselves in Canada, no matter the income that you're making. So it's just one of those situations that's unfortunate. Used to be able to do that, even if you were a high income earner, but now it's pretty much impossible. You're going to need more than $165,000 and more than $100,000 in the bank just to be able to get in the door to be able to buy the average price home in Canada. So we're talking today about how to be able to buy a more home if you're a single person or wanting to buy a home for yourself. So one way is to buy with friends and you all move in together and you share the living space. Another way would be able to get your mom and dad and grandma and grandpa on title and you guys all buy together. Mind you, you all have to be working or making a pension. And we see some more comments coming in on TikTok here. A lot of regular people can't do it. Yeah, you're right. Third way is you talk to a bunch of people and you say, okay, I'm going to live in the home. I'm going to take care of the maintenance, but will you co-sign for me? And in that case, I see a lot of people saying, you know what? I'll co-sign for you, but then what they want is they want a part of the profits in the end of the day. So if you're going to profit on the home, they want to be able to make some money off of you, and that's the way they co-sign. So unfortunately, there's a cost to that, but that's another way I've seen some people do it, where it's like a friend from work and they'll do it for another friend just so they can get in the house together, or they can get the one person into the other house. So you talk to someone that makes a lot of money and you get them to co-sign for you in return for some kind of financial incentive. I don't want to recommend it. I'm not a financial person that can do that kind of like, that's not financial advice. Make sure you talk to someone about that, like a lawyer, to set all that up properly. All right. So in other news, other than that, Bank of Canada didn't raise rates yesterday, which is great news. We won't have it become any harder to qualify for the next time being than it already is. Whoop-de-doo, which is great. So, as I said, if you want to buy the average price home in Canada, your application needs to have $165,000 of income and no debts to be able to get that average price home. Any kind of car loan, like one of these car loans that is $600 biweekly, not biweekly, $300 biweekly, that can cut into your borrowing power by up to $200,000. So that's a big deal too. We see that a lot where people buy a car and then they get approved for the car, they get a car, and then they want to buy a house. They think, oh, we got a car, we can easily get a house now. Make sure you do it the other way around. Make sure you get your house first and then get your car, because a car's debt is taken into consideration when qualifying for a mortgage. And a mortgage debt is not really the same way taken into consideration when qualifying for a vehicle loan. So try to drive your beater around, at least for those few months where you're trying to buy that house and qualify for that mortgage. That will also help you get the max mortgage you can qualify for today, so you can get into a better and more appropriately priced home that you love and enjoy. But yes, if you're a single person and you're trying to buy a home today, if you're just joining me today, it's impossible. You can't do it. You're going to need to do one of these two things. You're going to need to either talk to some friends to be able to get them to co-sign for you, or you guys all share a house and move in and share a living space. I've seen that happen quite often. Another way you can do it is to get all your family together to co-sign for you as well. I've seen in situations where even the family all co-signs and moves in together, where it's these immigrants that are coming to Canada. They all have minimum wage jobs, all six of them, but all six of them together it all adds up to a good income, and they can qualify for no matter what home that they want. The six of them all making minimum wage at full-time hours, they can all add their income together and pool their resources to be able to buy a home, no problem. So I think we'll probably be seeing a lot more of these multi-generational homes where people are buying homes with 4 or 5 other people if they're getting into the market for the first time. And then from that point, that will be the starter home, as you have a shared ownership in a property. And then from that, you move to a small home on your own. And then from that, a bigger home and a bigger home. So maybe there's this new step that has been created before buying your first small home on your own. And that would be to buy a shared home, a shared living space. So pick your friends or family that you're moving in with wisely, I would say, because you don't want an argument to dissolve the whole situation. Now, I always recommend to talk to a lawyer to get a joint venture agreement set up between everyone, so we all know how anything can be terminated. One person just can't sell, and that sort of thing. And what's happening with interest rates right now that the Bank of Canada didn't raise rates yesterday, which is awesome. Well, fixed rates, they have been going up quite considerably these last few weeks. Right now, we have 5-year fixed rates in the high 5s, low 6s, which is crazy. prime rate right now is sitting at 7.2%. So if you're getting a prime rate on your mortgage, 7.2% is the prime rate. And if you're getting a variable rate mortgage, quite often you get a discount to prime rate, which could be prime minus 1 or whatever it is. So fixed rates, they have been going up, and now they're kind of staying steady. Variable rates, no change there because obviously the Bank of Canada kept rates the same yesterday. So that's quite exciting news. We'll have to see how that pans out for the real estate market. I know it's been off and on quiet during the summer because of the way rates have been, and it's hard to qualify for things. But I do see some folks now looking to move up because, even though their homes have decreased in value slightly since the height of the market, another thing they're looking at doing is moving up in the down market because the down market allows them to buy the move up property at a little bit of a discount as well. So I hope that makes sense for all of you. So with that, I also wanted to chat about the average Canadian house price. I've been referring to that quite a bit here on Canadian Mortgage Weekly. And today, the average Canadian house price is sitting at $668,754. So over the last number of months, it had been going up since about February of this year. But since last month, it did have a 6% decrease to $668,754. So $668,754. So, and average sale price is going lower. So that's good to know. In other news, we also see that the Canadian inflation rate, although we don't have the most newest numbers out right now, we do see that inflation did go up to 3.3% in July. And in August, we should have those numbers out around, when should we have those numbers out? 19th of September, the CPI numbers come out, so we will be able to see what's happening in the Canadian inflation space. So who knows? What do you guys think will happen? Will inflation go down because GDP went down? We'll have to see. But with rates having gone up, one thing I am seeing, and I wanted to end the conversation on the episode with this, is a lot of landlords are calling me now that bought rental properties over the last 5 to 10 years, and they gave their tenants a good rental price during that time. But now, these landlords have kept the rents the same for 10 years, but their renewal just came in $1,000 higher. Should those landlords be allowed to raise the rent $1,000 to make up for that difference? Or should they eat that cost? Or should they split that cost 50-50 with the tenant? I know that there's not any 100% right answer, but I can't believe that rents are limited to be increased at 2.3% when I see a lot of landlords getting renewal papers that are $1,000 more, which can be an increase of 50% on their mortgage payment. It's quite crazy when you really think about it, because when it's that much higher, that landlord really thinks about selling. And when they do think about selling, a lot of these rental homes end up turning into homes for families. And yeah, $1,000. I've seen that. I just got a call yesterday from a landlord. The mortgage amount went up $1,000 for them. So it was quite crazy, actually. So what I wonder is, if the landlords consider selling, then that's taking a rental unit off the market, because usually what happens is new families that have just immigrated to Canada buy these rental units because they have these multi-kitchens. They can all live in this house comfortably together. So it takes that rental unit off the market. So for any new renters, they're coming into a market where the rental prices are just that much more competitive because there's that much less units into available to tenants. So is it better for them to sell or to eat the costs? I don't know. A lot of these landlords can't really eat the cost, so they end up selling, and tenant has to leave because the new people buying are moving in, and then forces that new tenant to then find a rental unit in a more competitive market because that rental unit was taken offline. So I don't see it as being a good solution. I would rather see, instead of tenants having to be evicted for landlords to sell, that the landlords should be able to work with the tenant to be able to create some kind of solution so the landlord can keep renting the unit to the tenant and everyone makes out in a fair way. I know it's a lot to kind of work out, a lot of moving parts to that, but that's what I see a lot of landlords facing right now, and they probably will sell. And because of the location of these homes, a lot of these homes are being converted into residential homes for folks that are moving to Canada. Anyway, thanks for joining me for episode 156 today, talking about how it's absolutely impossible for the single income person to buy a house in Canada anymore. If you have more questions or want to see more content, please follow or subscribe to my channel. I come out with a video every day as well as a podcast every week, and we'll see you next time on Canadian Mortgage Weekly, Canada's only weekly video mortgage news podcast.